Hey everyone, welcome to Sacred Laughter Podcast. I am your host, Chris Damron. Hey everyone, welcome back to this week's episode. In this week's episode, I'm going to share small stories of my grandpa and how he has impacted my life. So as I look back further in the past of when I was a kid and when we would spend time in Utah with my grandpa, he was such a gentle man. He would love to spend time with the kids. He always had a keen knack of allowing us to bond together, as well as share stories that sometimes left us laughing, hysterically, until grandma would, tell us that we needed to run outside or something because we were too loud. But when I look back at my grandpa, there's so many things that I could tell you about, but some of the small things I would like to share is just how of a kind, loving man he was and how much he enjoyed just being outside with nature. So as early as I can remember, when we would go visit him, prior to us moving to Utah, he would all throw us in the pickup truck and take us down to the dairy that was on Main Street. We'd grab an ice cream or a slushie, and then he would just take us for rides in the hills. And we would do that for hours. And he'd be driving, just, looking out the window, enjoying the scenery. And he would slap one of us on the leg or say, "Hey, do you guys see that deer over there?" And we never saw it. And there was a lot of times that he would say, like, "How many deer did you guys see on the ride?" And, as cousins, or even brother and sisters, we would just look at each other and say, "I don't know, 2 or 3." And he's like, "Well, you missed a lot." So that was always a fun thing to look back on, is, when grandpa would take us for rides, and, we'd have our eyes out the window and just staring up in the mountains, looking for deer, potentially for the upcoming deer season, or just to see the wildlife that was up there. And other things that he would do is, like, we would head out to the farm and, he would help cut hay and wheat and rye, and we would just throw it in the back of one of the big hay trucks and drive it to the chute. And then we would spend some time just sitting in the tractor or sitting in the loader and just having lunch together. And one of the things that was really cool about that is that grandma would always make us lunches. And it was really two things that would be in the lunch. Was there would be some type of candy bar, which we knew. We just didn't know what candy bar. Normally it was like a Snickers or a Baby Ruth. And then it was egg salad sandwiches. So that was something that I would look forward to anyway with grandpa's, on a hot sunny day, just sitting in the truck and, open up our lunch pails, and then there would be, a candy bar as well as egg salad sandwich that grandma would make. So that's like early childhood. And then as I progressively got older, with age, and then we ended up, like in previous episode, I said we moved to Utah. That was an optimal time that I was able to spend, more time with him. And, when I look back to that, there was, again, times on the farm, times in the mountains going for rides, deer hunting, camping at, in central Utah, we had this lake called Fish Lake. There is a Panguitch Lake, Otter Creek, and a few other places. And it was just, hey, we're going to go camping this weekend. We would, help grandpa get everything loaded in the truck or in the trailer, and we would just take off. And sometimes it would just be the three of us, me, grandma, and grandpa. And then we would head out to one of the areas and fish with one of the aunt and uncles that would join us. But there was one time specifically I remember when I was younger, we went to this small little lake called Casherm, and we would camp out in this one little spot where there was a little ledge that went down in the lake. And grandpa would always let us use his fishing poles. And so he rigged up this fishing pole. And I remember this, looking at the weight, and I was like, "Grandpa, I don't think this is enough weight." And he said, "It's not the size of the weight, it's the size of the cast." And I remember just, sitting there and just watching him cast. Like, it seemed like he went out for miles, but it was only like a couple hundred feet. So here, I think I was 12 or 13 years old. I'm taking a few steps back from the ledge, and I take 2 big steps and just lob this thing as far as I could. And it maybe went like 20 yards, and he just kind of chuckled. and I wanted to reel in, and he's like, nope, that's as far as you got it. You got to let it sit and let it rest. So we let it rest for 20, 30 minutes, and then nothing happened. So I would reel in and, cast again. I got a little bit better. And, eventually I was able to cast further out, but the fish weren't biting. So we really didn't catch any fish, which was fine. But just the simple things like that, it made me realize that, you may try something and it may not be as adequate as you want it to be. So you just still have to, live with it and just let it resonate and sit. And then when the time comes, try again, so those are one, like a life lesson he taught me. And, another one would be like when we were out deer hunting. So because of him and, my mom and dad growing up deer hunting as well, every year we would all get together as a huge family. So all my cousins, aunt and uncles would get together, and we would show up the day prior, and we would camp in a local spot, and then we would all go out and scout the day prior and then go back for dinner at the trailer. And grandma would always make chili, homemade chili from the rest of the venison from the year earlier. So then we'd all wake up early morning, and then grandpa had this rule where it was, if it was your first year hunting, you were taking the first shot. And I think it was me and another cousin, I think there's two of us, maybe there was three of us, that it was our first year hunting. And so I get to this spot, and, grandpa's with us, and there's kind of me and the other cousins there, and we see this nice little buck come out. So, one person takes a shot, misses, the second person takes a shot, misses, the third person takes a shot, misses, and it would just go in unison until you would eventually injure or kill the deer. So opening morning comes, I'm with grandpa and my dad, and my other two cousins were with their parents, and we see this really nice deer, and this nice buck, muley deer. And I couldn't get a good sight on him from where I was standing through the sagebrush to where he was standing. So we had a 4-wheeler in the back of my truck, or my dad's truck. And I remember my grandpa's like, well, go get on the 4-wheeler. So I go up and sit on the 4-wheeler, and I'm holding this rifle, and I take a few shots, and the deer was just standing there. The buck was just standing, like nothing was even happening, like no flinch, nothing. And so I end up unloading the magazine. My dad gives me his rifle. I unload the second magazine, and then the buck just slowly runs away, and we can hear a couple of their gunshots over the hill. So me and my dad walk up there, and we find the spot where the buck was, and it was standing like right in front of a tree. So we kind of knew what the tree looked like that we were going to go towards. And tell you what, there was like a giant hole, right through the tree where I was hitting. So I was high, from where I should have been hitting. And I just remember going back and, telling grandpa like, hey, I missed the buck. And he's like, yep. And I was like, but I, took a giant hole out of the tree. And he laughed and he goes, well, you can't take that home and eat it. So we kind of just had a good laugh about that. And, like I said, those are just like how it was. Like he was very subtle, and, he was just a man of nature. Like I could go on for so many stories, and there was a lot of times that we would go for rides, and he would tell us all these areas that he would trap around the area that we grew up in, or he grew up in. And, it just became more surreal as, a man that just loved nature as much as he did, and how he was able to prosper from the area around. And he didn't let that stop him as he gotten older, and, his kids and his grandkids, wanting to participate in the activities he did. So eventually, through a couple years, we built a house right next to my grandparents' house. They had a giant lot, and one of the lots was his garden, and they had like a chicken coop on there. So we tore all that down, and my parents ended up building a house. So kind of from that time on, I kept this a secret for a lot of years. And I think it was, I think I was in middle school. So what's that? 6th or 7th grade. I would sneak out every night and run over next door, and watch, I don't know, like an hour or 2 hours of MASH, the old Vietnam movie or series, and then have a hot chocolate or chocolate milk. with my grandpa and grandma. So I did that almost every night, or as always, all the way up into high school, got my license, and then continued throughout the duration before shipping out to basic training at 20 years old. But, that's kind of like the small town feel. Like, my parents didn't know, but I was able to kind of sneak out of my house and run next door. I wasn't doing anything bad, wasn't hanging out with, anybody other than just, grandma and grandpa. But, because I started to build more and more of that relationship, I was able to kind of see a different side of my grandpa. And, because of that, we spent more time, out in, in nature. So, I think it was my junior year. Yeah. Cause my brother was a year older than me. So my junior year, we, found a couple campsites that we wanted to camp out at like the end of graduation. So my brother graduated high school. At the end of the school year, we would go up for like a week or 2 weeks up into this area called Fish Lake, and we would just camp. Grandpa would throw his trailer up there if we needed it, and mainly it was just a tent camp. But he would bring his boat, and we would get out there and fish and just enjoy just as cousins. And then periodically, my dad and my grandpa would drive up to check on us. And then that summer, during that time, I was still involved in all the sports I was playing. I was involved in basketball, baseball, and football, and I kind of did some other activities I felt like I wanted to try. But I would still spend time, with my grandpa, and allow us to, live life together and grow. So there was a few times that we would go camping together, and I just remember this one trip, Otter Creek. It's just a little further south of central Utah where I grew up, and we're out in the middle of the lake fishing, and we're in probably like a 15-footer or 20-footer John boat, and we're kind of coming from the south end of the lake going back up to the dock, and he's like, "Hey, you want to drive the boat?" And that was kind of like a big thing for us grandkids, like, grandpa's letting us drive the boat. And I just remember looking at him, and I was like, "Really? You're going to let me drive the boat?" He's like, "Yeah. I mean," he's like, "You're old enough. I think it's okay." And so we kind of switched spots, in the middle of the lake. And he was, showing me how to drop my rig down in the lake, and let it troll as we're, going in, and how to get the heading so the front of the boat stays in the direction that we want to go. And it was just fun. I honestly can't tell you any other time that he let any other cousins drive it, other than like my significantly older cousins. But it was just me and him, and he just kind of sat back in the chair up towards the front of the boat and just took a nap. He would always wear a flannel jacket, and he kind of had like these penny loafer shoes that he would always wear, and he had like a trucker's hat, and he just kind of put that, swoop down in, on his head, button up his flannel, and just took a nap. And, here I am, just kind of fishing, trolling with the boat and trying to make sure I don't take the boat off the heading. But, I look back to that a lot in life and realize how simple things were and how simple things can be, when you're around loved ones, and that time right there was probably the most instrumental in my life, because I was kind of deciding what I wanted to do. I wanted to, do I want to go to college? The military wasn't an option for me yet. I kind of talked to him a little bit about military, just because he served for a small portion when he was 17 or 18 years old. And again, it was just one of those things where I felt like I, should stay a little bit closer to home and, support my parents as well as my grandparents, as they needed help with chores and everything around the house. But there was probably not a time that like we would go out and not have a good time. I mean, even fishing in the rain, hunting in the rain, camping in the rain, like we always embodied it and embraced it and just loved it. So now let's, look to a point where, now I'm starting to think about military as more of an option. And I just remember, the recruiter coming to the house, and I kind of didn't tell my parents what I was doing. I just kind of was in a situation in life where I just wanted to kind of leave and get out. Um, and so the recruiter showed up, and I just remember like talking to this guy, and he's like, all right, what do you want to do in the Army? Like, what do you think? And, there's a couple National Guard people in town. There is a National Guard armory in town where I felt like I probably should join to stay local, as a field artilleryman. But I wanted more of a challenge, and that's probably why I chose active duty. So I joined active duty as an infantryman, and I just remember signing the paperwork for the delay entry. And got my date shortly after to, ship out to basic training at Fort Benning, Georgia, now Fort Moore, Georgia. But I remember walking next door and telling my grandpa, and he didn't really have a good look of excitement or frustration. He just said, okay, if that's what you want to do, we love you, and that's kind of how he always was. And so I went off to basic training, come home for Christmas time because I shipped out a little later in the year. Came home for Christmas, ran next door, say hi to grandma and grandpa. Grandpa just said, I'm proud of you for what you're doing. And that was pretty much it. That's the context of what we kind of talked about. But as, life got kind of crazy there for a while, and I was doing a couple deployments, only going home when I could, and then, spending some time overseas, being stationed in Germany and Alaska. The time significantly decreased of, opportunities to see my grandparents. So when I would go home, I would spend a lot of time over there and just sitting with them and just enjoying stories. But I realized that, we get older, people get older. And, through it all he would say is, I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of you. And at the time, that's all I cared. Like, I was happy. Like, I cared that he cared that what I was doing was a significant impact. There's probably things I did that they didn't appreciate, or things that I, said about what I've done, while I was overseas. But at no time did he ever convey that to me. He just looked at me, would smile, and, would shake my hand or give me a hug and just say that he's proud of me. And that's, like I said, that's really all I needed from him. For a lot of years, I looked at him as a father figure just as much as my own dad, and he would share a lot of the knowledge and experience with me and my brother and sister, as well as our cousins. But I felt like I had more of a connection with him because I spent a lot of time with him. And like I said, I can go on for hours and just explain how much this man, meant to me, and how much he cared not only for me, but everyone else around us, all my loved ones. But there's something that resonates with me more today, was just like how calm he was. I remember a couple years ago, or a little longer, having a conversation with my mom of just how, how still and how pure my grandpa was. And my mom would laugh and say, well, you didn't see him, when I grew up. And, and that's probably true. He probably was a changed man. And then he, realized that things needed to be different, and he changed his heart. But the way that he cared about his grandkids, that was the true, genuine care that we needed as grandkids. And then we probably still share it among our own kids. And we just enjoy, his time with us. And he's dead now. Passed away about a few years ago, which was significantly hard on all of us, and he was, well, I shouldn't say he was, like, so this man, fought adversity. He had multiple heart attacks, had a couple strokes, broke his back, broke his hip, fell off the roof I don't know how many times. Would cut himself on his finger and just look at it and just say, oh, it's all right, it's not that deep, just working, doing stuff on the farm or working around the house. But to him, like, he was just living his life normally. But as a grandkid or a kid, seeing the way that he would perform, it was like, this dude's like a Roman a Roman I don't know, like a soldier. Like, he didn't feel pain. I do remember was saying that, so I do remember him, like us going to visit him after he broke his back, and he was laid up in the house, and he would just sit there and and just be super excited to see us, and he would try to roll over to give us hugs, and but he would never show pain, and you can tell that he's in pain, and you can tell that he's hurting on the inside, but the emotion on the outside never showed. And that's so cool and so humbling to see that as he was suffering from pain, and as he got older, and the pain got worse, and then he right before he died, I mean, I wasn't able to go see him because I was up in Alaska, and I had some training exercises that I was doing. But without living in technology, like, I was able to FaceTime with my sister and my mom, and we were able to have a small conversation on the phone right before he passed. But to kind of go back to what I was saying earlier, though, like, this man left a huge impact on my life, and I could still, to today, at 40 years old, having my own kids, and teach them life lessons, I can convert back to something he shared with me, something that he taught me, and it resonates like it happened yesterday. Just the other day I was doing something. I think I was like I was trimming some bushes, or trimming some trees or something, and I got a whiff of something. I mean, I don't know. And it took me back to something I did with my grandpa, and I mean, I could be fishing, and there's times that I feel like he's right there in the boat next to me, or, I would catch something, or catch a fish, or kill an animal, and I would just go back to, like, the things he taught me, that the way I needed to take care of it and prepare it. So, yeah, I like I said, I could go on for hours, and I mean, there's probably gonna be times here in the future where I have, other family members on that can share a lot of their experiences with their time with grandpa as well. And like I said, it's just a super humbling experience that I was able to share a small portion of my life with him. But the things that he has taught me, and the things that he had shared with me and shared with my cousins, and I know I'm very close to some of my cousins still, and we actually still talk about a lot of the things that we have done together. And it's so cool that, we haven't forgotten that, but it's just so humbling that, his legacy still lives on, through us as his grandkids, and even with his own kids, with my mom and my aunt and uncle, that they're still sharing stories. And, as this podcast is going to come out here soon. While you guys are listening, it's probably going to be roughly around the week of Thanksgiving. And as we look at, the holidays, we know being around family is important. And there's going to be a lot of families that are missing loved ones, so just take a moment and just express your love and gratitude that you have for those loved ones that aren't with you, and just look back at, the remembering of what they've done in your life, or the stories that you have that brought laughter, that brought, a tear. As we walk in life, sometimes it might be rough, sometimes it might be a little easy, and that's okay. But we just need to remember, the places we've been and the people that influenced us. And like I said, with this week coming up with the Thanksgiving and the holidays, depending on, when you guys listen to this, like right now it's, November 18th. But like I said, just take some time just to give thanks and gratitude for the family members that are with you, as well as the family members that are not with you. And I'm so blessed that I'm able to share the stories I have with people that have influenced my life the most. And like I said, my grandpa was one of the most influential men in my life, as well as others. It wasn't just me, it was other family members and other friends that he had around the valley, and I don't want to lose the the way of honoring him. He was a service member as well, and we honored him with a service member burial, which was fantastic. And those are things that we can't always forget. What our service members have done for us. I just wanted to share. I'm kind of rambling right here because I got a lot. I would love to say a lot, but I just wanted to share small little bits of, like I said, how this great man influenced my life. And I hope you guys have enjoyed this week's episode. And I really hope, like I said, you guys take some time to continue to look back and cherish your time with loved ones. And again, just really thankful that I'm able to share my stories with you, and that I'm able to continue to walk this beautiful earth that was made for us, in his glory. Again, thank you so much for this time, and we'll see you next week.